Gerard Carlos and G. Struck and Chakta Eamon Ryan.
Thank you very much indeed, Count Corla. Can I start, and I didn't say this to start, by wishing Minister Bruton and Mr. Canny well. We do have to all pull together, and I think we have to pull together to turn this country green. I'd say, Minister Bruton, that one thing slightly struck me in your speech, when you said honestly you're the old school, or well, the ESRI school. I think the ESRI School of Economics is not actually going to be sufficient today. There was that 15-year-old schoolgirl, Swedish schoolgirl, speaking in Helsinki last weekend, and I think she put it really well, speaking about climate change. She said, "We can't save the world by playing by the existing rules, because the rules have to change." And I think the rules of economics have to change. Fundamentally, what we value, how we price, how we measure natural resources and its use in the economic system has to fundamentally and radically change. Now, this bill ain't going to do it, but this bill is part of that change. I mean, Greta said in that same speech that the politics that are needed to prevent the climate catastrophe don't exist today. I hope we can prove her wrong. Or I hope we can be inspired by that vision of what a 15-year-old is saying we need to do to show that we can deliver the politics. And I think it's interesting in listening to the contributions here today. We've had this debate a year ago, a year and a half ago. Climate wasn't mentioned so much that time. It was all about natural protection. But I think it's right to bring it in, because I think what we're starting to realise in our own Oireachtas Climate Action Committee is the scale of the change we need to make. How we're so radically off course in this country, and we need to change everything. Not just energy, but also transport, but also land use, but also move towards a circular economy where we're using materials less and using them really wisely. And this is complex. You know, it's true that sometimes you might switch from plastic to paper, and the paper might have a significant carbon footprint too. But using less and using things cleverly and doing things with that perspective in mind, in changing everything, is what we need to do. And it's a different understanding of economics, I think, is going to be what we need. I stand by this bill. I heard various people saying, oh, they'd like to change it this way and that. Well, I'd love to have the debate in committee stage as to what would be changed, because I, to be honest, wouldn't change it that much at all. I think it's a really good piece of legislation. We would change the original section we put in saying a ban on the single-use plastic cups. We accepted the legal advice that actually that might be difficult and a levy would work just as well. The Minister and the Department seemed to agree with that, and we agreed with them. So that's the one amendment I would make. I believe we could legally, I disagree with you, Minister, that we could introduce the ban. We got so much legal advice from our Oireachtas legal support, and I think, having listened extensively to them, this bill stands up legally. In fact, it's in touch with what's going on in the Commission. We'll be out of the legal order if we don't apply these sort of measures. But this, some people said, oh, there needs to be a much more detailed bill, a longer bill. I disagree. I go back and look and see what was the statutory instrument we introduced when we put in a ban on smoking in public spaces. It's about that long. And how extensive was the legislation, the statutory instrument we put in when we put in the levy in plastic bags? It's about that long. And this is similar. This is the same school of legislation as the plastic bag levy and the smoking ban came for. This is absolutely appropriate, Minister, for us to say we make a political decision here, we introduce a smoking ban. Short legislation. We introduce a levy on plastic bags. Short legislation. We stop the ban of single-use plastics. It's absolutely correct and valid to do that as a short political. And it is political rather than technical legislation, because just like those levies, the plastic bag was using the Waste Management Act of '96, and the levy on smoking was using the Public Health Tobacco Act of 2002, our bill is using the existing provisions in the '96 Waste Management Act, which give us, we believe, all the tools to do what we seek to achieve. And I would love to debate at committee stage someone who disagrees with that analysis or thinks that there needs to be some whole ream of other legislation written to deliver the objectives that we seek to deliver, that I hear no one here disagreeing with. Now, I hear, Mr. Kennedy, your closing remarks is very similar to a lot of what I've heard the industry saying, how great and good we are and so on. I'm sorry, we're not good enough. And I've heard the representatives of REPAC, not the individual companies, but the spokesperson for the organisation admitting that as such, and that the whole system does have to change. And that this line that Department of Roads put out saying, oh, well, we're exceptionally good in this country because we have a producer responsibility scheme that all those other countries in America or in Australia or in Germany don't have. They don't have this brilliant system we have. Well, I'm sorry. There needs to be an acknowledgement that the current system is not going to deliver those higher recycling rates that we need. And, Minister, the only disagreement we have on this is how much analysis do we need on the 90% recycling target. You said here today that the government is accepting that. My understanding in the European Council and in the trialogue process, you're going to be promoting it. And I presume that's done on some analysis. We're not just promising to do it in Europe without having some consideration as to how we might do it. The consideration has been done, thanks to Voice Ireland, Mindy O'Brien, thanks to Friends of the Earth, thanks to our own Green Research team who've done a real good work on this, thanks to Dominic Hogg, you know me, probably the best expert who we brought over here into our committee, thanks to the European Commission, who've spent the last 2 or 3 years looking at this in real detail. We're not flying blind here without research having been done. So if we're committing tomorrow, as I understand I'm sure Irish parliamentarians are, and if we are within the European Council committing to a 90% recycling target, and I've asked the question, I asked it again tonight and I have not got an answer, how do you achieve a 90% recycling target in anything other than a deposit refund scheme? Minister, if your officials want to send me a written answer to that question tomorrow, if they have another method of doing it, I'd love to hear it, but I don't believe it exists. And this is the only point of contention and difference as to whether, because there's agreement, as I understand, on the ban of single-use plastic knives, forks, plates and so on, there has been in committee. My understanding there's also agreement on the introduction of a levy and the move towards compostable, and we have to be careful on the technology of this. There's all sorts of different definitions of what sort of materials a cup will be made of and so on. But that's why our bill is not introducing a smoking ban tomorrow or an end of plastic bags tomorrow. It's saying you've 3 or 4 years to work out the mechanics of what exactly are the materials we want to promote. But there's no one disagreeing with the fundamental intention. The only disagreement is on that deposit refund scheme. And I don't believe the government have a valid answer to the question of what else would you do when you're going out there in Europe banging the chest saying we're part of the 90% team. Well, I think it's actually more honest and more appropriate for us here today to have said, yes, we go to committee stage. Yes, we want, in the same way that we issued the smoking ban and the plastic bag levy, we give a political signal here. It's fairer to industry and to all the shops and all the cafes and all the people to give that political signal. Sometimes that's what you need legislation to do. Our legislation does it in absolutely correct, legal, European-supported process and ways. Minister, if you say you're going to come back to us and prove that you are actually willing to do it, I have a question. How long will it take the department to come round to say they're willing to give this signal? How long will Fine Gael take? Is it a matter of weeks that you could come back to us and say you've done the review and yes, you think it's time for us to give that signal? Not that we need to have the entire mechanics of the whole new system in place, because that will take a couple of years. But I want to know how many weeks it's going to take you, how soon can you come back before you can give this the all clear and the go ahead, allow us to get the money order so we can go into committee stage, so we can get it through the House and we give the Irish people another good news story of the environment, which we are good at. We're not bad at this. All that's missing is the new politics that that young girl in Sweden, in Helsinki, spoke about last week. Thank you.